the dinner guest. Paul never liked dinner parties. The small talk, the fake smiles, the way people pretended to care. It all felt like a play where everyone knew their lines, except him. But tonight, he had no choice. His wife, Lisa, had insisted. "It's important," she had said. "We can't say no." So now he was here, sitting at a long wooden table in a house that smelled of expensive wine and fresh flowers. Their hosts, Mark and Julia, were the perfect couple, rich, charming, and always in control. The other guests were just like them. Paul could already hear them talking about their children's private schools and their summer vacations in Italy. He took a sip of his wine. It was good, too good. Mark raised his glass. To old friends and new beginnings. Everyone smiled and drank. Paul forced a smile, but his stomach felt tight. He wasn't sure why. The food arrived, beautiful plates of lamb and roasted vegetables. Lisa was laughing at something Julia said. Mark was telling a story about his business. The conversation flowed like the wine, smooth, effortless. Then, in the middle of it all, Mark looked straight at Paul. His smile didn't change, but his eyes did. "You remember what happened last summer, don't you?" Paul felt the room go quiet. The voices, the laughter, it all faded. His grip on the wine glass tightened. Of course he remembered. How could he forget? Paul's heart beat faster. He could feel the eyes of everyone on him, even though no one had said anything. The air in the room grew heavy. "Last summer," Paul repeated, trying to sound calm. He hoped no one could hear the panic in his voice. Mark didn't answer immediately. He took a long sip of his wine, watching Paul the whole time. It was as if he was enjoying the discomfort, enjoying the power he held in that moment. Lisa, sitting beside Paul, looked confused. She glanced from Mark to Paul, not understanding what was happening. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but the question was clear. Paul couldn't look at her. He knew she didn't remember. She hadn't been there. She didn't know. Don't worry about it," Mark said, smiling again, like it was all a joke. But Paul could see the coldness behind it. Just a little joke between old friends. Everyone laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was uncomfortable, forced. Paul felt his face turning red. He wasn't sure how to respond. Should he laugh too? Should he pretend it didn't matter? Or should he finally tell the truth? The truth. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm his breathing. Last summer was a long time ago, but it still felt like it had happened just yesterday. He thought he had forgotten, that it had all been buried. But Mark's words had brought it all back. "I should go," Paul said suddenly, standing up from a table. The others stopped talking. The room went silent again. Lisa looked at him, surprised. "Go." "Paul, what's wrong?" He felt her hand on his arm, but he pulled away. He couldn't explain it, not now, not here. "I'll be back in a moment," Paul said quickly, turning toward the door. He left the room, walking into the hallway. His head was spinning. The air in the house felt thick, like it was pressing down on him. He could hear the faint sounds of the guests talking again, but it didn't matter. He needed to get away from all, from the house, from the laughter. He needed to think. There was only one way to end this. Paul stepped into the quiet of the hallway. The sound of voices muffled behind him. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. His hands were shaking. He had to be strong. He couldn't let this happen again. The memory from last summer rushed back. He had tried to forget it. He had tried to convince himself it didn't matter. But it did. It always had. He turned down the hallway, heading toward the back door of the house. He needed some space, a few moments alone. The evening was slipping away from him, and he couldn't stop it. As he reached for the door, he heard a voice. It was Lisa's. Paul's. She was standing at the end of the hallway, looking at him with concern. What's going on? What's happening? Paul couldn't look at her. Not now. He couldn't explain all, not tonight, not at this dinner. But he knew that the truth was coming, whether he was ready or not. "I'll be fine," he said quickly. "Just need a moment." But Lisa wasn't convinced. She stepped closer. What did Mark mean about last summer? Paul closed his eyes, taking a slow breath. It was impossible to explain in just a few words. How could he tell her everything? "Please, Paul, I don't understand." He turned to face her, finally meeting her eyes. She looked lost, confused. She didn't know. She couldn't know. "You'll understand soon," Paul said, his voice quieter than before. He didn't want to say more. The words were stuck in his throat, heavy and painful. Lisa was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said softly. "But we have to talk about it. You can't hide it forever." Paul felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had kept the secret for so long, trying to protect Lisa, trying to protect himself. But now, in this house, in front of these people, the past had found him, and it wasn't going away. The door behind him opened, and Mark stepped into the hallway. His smile was gone, replaced by a cold look of curiosity. "Everything okay?" Paul didn't answer. He didn't trust himself to speak. Instead, he turned and walked past Mark, back toward the front door. The evening was over for him. As he stepped outside into the cool night air, he felt both a sense of relief and dread. The house, the people, the dinner, it all felt like a dream. But the nightmare, the one he had been running from, was real, and he couldn't escape it. The night air was cold against Paul's skin. He stood on the porch, breathing deeply, trying to push away the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. The sound of voices inside the house seemed distant now, but he could still feel the weight of their gaze on him. He wasn't sure what he was doing anymore. Was he running away? Or was he just trying to escape the inevitable? His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't need to look at it to know it was Lisa. She must have gone back inside, trying to understand. trying to fix everything. But it wasn't something she could fix. It wasn't something he could fix either. The past was still there, pressing on his chest. The words Mark had said were like a key turning in a locked door, opening up memories he had kept hidden for so long. Paul glanced at his phone. The message from Lisa was simple. "Please, come back." He typed a quick reply, "I need time." But deep down, he knew the truth. Time wasn't going to make this easier. It wasn't going to change anything. Paul walked away from the porch and down the driveway, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty night. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the cool breeze made him shiver. He needed to talk to someone. He couldn't do this alone. The phone in his hand buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Lisa. It was Mark. "Are you sure you want to leave like this?" the message read. Paul stopped walking. His hand tightened around the phone. Mark's words sent a chill down his spine. It was like a challenge, an invitation to face the truth. "Come back. We can talk about it," Mark had written. Paul stood there for a moment, looking at the message. He was standing at a crossroads, unsure of what path to take. If he went back inside, the evening would continue. If he stayed away, the questions would only grow louder. He turned and walked back toward the house, his decision made. It wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about facing the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When he reached the door, it opened before he could knock. Lisa stood there, her expression unreadable. "Are you ready to talk?" she asked softly. Paul nodded. It was time to face what he had been running from. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter and chatter from before had disappeared, replaced by a heavy silence. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one was saying anything. Paul could feel their eyes on him, but he didn't care anymore. Lisa led him to the living room, where they sat together on the couch. She looked at him, waiting for him to explain, but Paul couldn't find the words. How could he start? How could he tell her everything that had happened? The silence stretched on, and finally, Lisa spoke. "Paul, I don't understand. What is this about? What did Mark mean by last summer?" Paul took a deep breath. It was time to speak. "Last summer," he began slowly, "I did something terrible. Something I've never told anyone." He paused, trying to steady his nerves. "Mark knows about it. That's why he said those things tonight." Lisa's face was filled with confusion, but there was also concern in her eyes. "What did you do, Paul?" He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering the courage to say the words. "I made a mistake, a big one, and Mark, he knows about it. He's been holding it over me for months." The room felt colder now, as if the weight of his words was making the air harder to breathe. Lisa leaned forward, her voice soft but steady. "Paul, you have to tell me what happened. I can't help you if you don't." He looked at her, his heart racing. He could feel the pressure building, but he knew she was right. He had to tell her. "I hurt someone," Paul whispered. "Someone I loved." Lisa's eyes widened, But she didn't interrupt. She just waited patiently for him to continue. It was a long time ago. I didn't mean to hurt them, but I did. And Mark, he was there. He saw it happen. Paul could feel the tears starting to well up in his eyes. He wiped them away quickly, ashamed of himself. I try to make it right, Lisa. I really did. But Mark, he wants to use it against me. He wants to make me suffer. Lisa sat in silence for a moment, processing what he had said. Paul could see the shock in her face, but he also saw something else. Something he hadn't expected. Understanding. Paul, she said softly, I don't know what happened, but I know you're not the same person you were back then. We all make mistakes. The important thing is what we do now. We can't change the past, but we can decide how we move forward. Her words hit him like a wave, washing away some of the tension he had been carrying for so long. Thank you, he whispered. She smiled gently. We'll figure this out together, but you have to be honest with yourself. And with me. Paul nodded. For the first time that night, he felt a sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, he could face his past. Maybe, just maybe, he could finally find peace. But he knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. And there would be more moments like this. Moments when the past would try to break through again. But with Lisa by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Paul had admitted his mistake to Lisa, but that didn't make everything better. The tension between them was still there, like an invisible thread pulling them in different directions. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had done, and the shame was heavier than ever. But Lisa was patient. She didn't push him to open up more than he already had. Instead, she was there, quietly supporting him. Every time he caught her gaze, he saw understanding. He saw the kindness he didn't deserve. One evening, after work, Paul sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. The house was quiet, and for a moment, he allowed himself to relax. But then, the sound of a doorbell echoed through the house. He wasn't expecting anyone. Lisa stood at the door when he got up to answer it. It was Mark. Paul, Mark said, his voice cold, we need to talk. Paul's heart skipped a beat. He didn't want to face Mark. Not now. But he knew it was inevitable. I don't have anything to say to you, Paul replied, trying to sound stronger than he felt. Mark smirked. I think you do. You've been hiding from me long enough. But hiding won't make this go away. Paul stepped back, letting Mark inside. Lisa was in the other room, but Paul wasn't sure he wanted her involved in this conversation. What do you want from me? Paul asked, his voice tight. Mark took a deep breath, leaning against the wall. I want you to fix this. The mistake you made. The one you think you can hide forever. Paul shook his head. I'm done with this. I've apologized. I've faced my past. What more do you want? Mark's eyes narrowed. It's not enough. You can't just sweep this under the rug. I'm trying to move on, Paul said, his voice wavering. "I'm trying to live my life." But Mark was relentless. "You think you can just forget everything? It doesn't work that way, Paul. The past has a way of coming back, and I won't let you forget what you did." Mark's words stung like a slap, but Paul stood his ground. He wasn't going to let Mark control him any longer. "I'm not going to play your game," Paul said firmly. "You don't have the power over me anymore." Mark's eyes softened for a moment, but his smirk remained. "You think so? We'll see about that." And with that, Mark turned and left, leaving Paul standing in the doorway. Paul closed the door behind him, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over him. He wasn't sure what Mark would do next, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let his past control him any longer. He walked into the living room, where Lisa was waiting. She looked at him with concern, but also with hope. "I'll be okay," Paul said, taking a deep breath. "I know what I have to do now." Lisa smiled softly, and for the first time in a long while, Paul felt a sense of peace. He didn't have all the answers, but he was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would move forward.